Hey monkeys, it's Jim from Small Time Outlaws, bringing you the 10th video in this advanced programming in monkey tutorial series. And in this video we're going to be finishing up with reflection, and I'm going to be showing you a couple of practical examples of reflection in action. So to start, I've just created a new file and I've called mine tutorial 10. You can call yours whatever you want. And we're going to set up our reflection filter. And import reflection. And what I'm doing in this one, it's be kind of a quick example, and then the next example is going to be pretty long. In this one I'm going to be showing you how to create events and callback functions using reflection. And so where you'll typically see a callback is with a user interface, and a callback is a function that's called whenever an action is taken by the user in this interface. So in this case, we're going to be simulating the user clicking a button and then a function being called whenever that button is clicked. So we'll start by creating a class button, and this button's going to have just a couple fields. One, say what text is on the button, even though we're not really going to be using that. And the next field, this is going to store the function info object data for the function that we want to call whenever the user clicks on this button. I like the way I said button there. And now we're going to create the constructor for our button. I don't know why I keep saying button like that. And we're going to send in the string, and we're going to send in a function info object for the function we want to call whenever this button is clicked. And we're going to initialize text with the text coming in, and we're going to initialize the onClick func field with the onClick function that we send in, and close off our constructor. And the second method we're going to create is just our function that's going to simulate the user clicking on this button. And all you do inside this click method, is called the onClick func fields invoke method. And in this case, our onClick functions aren't going to have any parameters, so we're just going to use the empty array literal. And that's it for this class. So now that we've done that, we're going to create a couple functions that we want to call whenever our buttons are clicked. And we're just going to call this one button1 clicked, and then when it's clicked we're going to say button1 was clicked. And let's create a function for button2, and we will say button2 was clicked. And now let's create our main function and create a couple buttons. And we're going to pass in some random, like, let's say this is button1 for its text. And now at this point we want to get a function info object for a particular function. So if you remember from the reflection functions video, I'm going to use the get functions function from the reflection module, and we're going to specify which button or which function we want to get by name. And don't forget, it's case sensitive, so you got to match the case that you put up there. And that's the first parameter, and the second one is the array of the types of the parameters that the function takes. In this case there are no parameters, so we use the empty array, and that creates our first button. And now for our second button, we're going to just copy and paste and change all these to 2s. And now that we have our two buttons, we're going to call button1.click to simulate this button being clicked, and button2.click to simulate this other button being clicked. And finish off our main function by returning 0. And now this should work when we build and run. And so you see button1 was clicked and button2 was clicked. So you kind of see the uses for this. You're actually able to store a reference to a function inside this field allowing you to create as many buttons as you want and have as many functions as you want be clicked when those buttons are clicked. And this can all either be done right here at design time, or you can do it, as I've said, you can do it at runtime. So that's how you do a callback or event. So the next thing I'm going to show you is how to use reflection to kind of set up a little, it's kind of borderline scripting language. You could also kind of think of this as if you've ever played like the Valve first-person shooters, they have that console that pops up when you hit the tilde key, and then you can do commands in there like set gravity and stuff. That's what we're going to do. So we're going to include the player class from the previous video, and if you don't have the code for that still, I'll switch it here so you can see. You can pause the video and type this up real fast. Waiting for you. Okay. Now we're going to include the full path to that module as before, which is test_module.player in my case, and we need to import that module. And after we've done that, we're going to go ahead and get rid of all this button stuff. We don't need it anymore because it's a completely separate example. And now what we're going to do is, because we're not actually able to do user input at this point, I'm going to simulate it with a string list, and I'm going to create a global for the string list, and this is just going to be a simulated console input, and so we'll be able to add commands to simulate a user actually typing these commands in to our console. And I'm going to, so we can demonstrate the ability to edit or change globals within a console. Going to create a simple global. We're going to call this global gravity and initialize it at 9.8 meters per second. And then once we're in our main function, we're going to initialize our console string list object with a new with a new string list. And now the first couple of console commands I want to set up are ones that will allow us to change this gravity global for our game and to read it. And so it's going to be something like, so you can see what we're going to be doing. It's going to be something like set, and that's going to be our command. And then we will be able to set any global that has been reflected using our filter. So any global, in this case, they're going to be able to type in something like gravity, and then followed by a space, and then a value they want to set it to. And if we were to say like some random, like 12.0. So what we're creating is a way for the user to actually do this, to actually modify globals in the program. Kind of cool, right? Yeah. Well, it's cool to me anyway. So we'll say console in, we're going to add last, and we're just going to add one command that we simulate the user entering. And now we're going to create another function. What this function is going to do is go through all of the items in this console in string list and process them. So we're going to go below our main function, create process input. Oh, spell function correctly. Close that off. And we're just going to go through our console list, get a string for each one. So each in, console in. And now, using the split method that we learned about before, if you saw this beginning series, we're going to create an array of strings called pieces. You can call it whatever you want, and we're going to take each in string, split it, and we're going to split it at every occurrence of the space character. So in this case, we're going to get, with the first one, we're going to get an array of 3 strings, first one being set, next one gravity, and the final one being 12.0. And then with that, we're going to use the select statement to check the first item in this array for what command the user's trying to say. And what we're going to do is we're actually convert it to all lowercase, so we can always tell what the user's trying to say no matter what case they put it in. And we're going to use the case keyword to check each case of each command we want to define. So in this case we're going to say case set, so in case this first piece, this first string that it gets is the word set, we're going to call a set global function that we're about to write. And we're going to send in the second string in our pieces array, which will be the name of the global that we want to change, followed by our next argument, which will be the third string, and that's going to be the value that we want to set it to. Now that we've done that, let's close off the select statement and close off the loop, and let's make our set global function. And the first is going to be our global name, which can be a string, and the second is our value, which is also going to be a string. And we're going to convert that right now. So the first thing we want to do is get the global info object for the global that the user is trying to change. And for this we'll use the get global function from the reflection module and use that string that's getting passed in. And now at this point what you're going to want to do is we're going to be doing stuff to this global info object, so you want to make sure that we actually got an object from the global get global function, because what we're allowing the user to do is specify anything here. So if they specify some crazy global that's not actually in the system, you're going to get a null or an empty object back. So we need to check and make sure this glob info object isn't empty. And to do that, you just check it against the null keyword. And this is something I probably should have gone over a while ago, but I forgot. But this is just, in Monkey, null is just an empty object, or it's just emptiness. It's nothing. It's null. So we're checking if this object we got back from get global is empty or not, and if it is, we're going to call this else, and we're going to print it off and say, hey, we got nothing back. That doesn't exist. So we're going to say error global, and we'll format it. We'll say global glob, which was our name that was coming in. We'll say does not exist. Right. And now that we've done that, we're going to use another select statement to check the name of the type of this global info object, as we did in the first reflection video. And then using case, we're going to check each one. If you remember, these are all called monkey.boxes. Now we're going to check if it's an int. That's how you check if this global is an int. And then we're going to set the value of this global info object to a boxed int, and then the value string converted to int by typecasting. If you saw that video, we're going to typecast this value string as an int, then box it, then set the value. It's kind of a lot going on, but not too bad. Now we're going to check if it's a float object, and we're going to set the value. We're going to box a float, use the float typecast this string value, and finally I'm just going to copy this. I can just go a little faster. We're going to check for the string object, and then we're going to box a string, and then we will don't need a typecast because it's already a string. And then now we can just close the select off, and if it's anything else it won't do anything, and that's fine. We're not going to worry about anything else. And now that we're setting the value of this global, I'm going to go here, and after we process this input, we're just going to print it off just to make sure that it actually works. And so I'm going to run this, and there you go, print it off. We changed this global value to 12, at runtime using input from the user. Simulated, but you know what I mean. So pretty cool, huh? So what we're going to do is I actually got another command get, allow them to get any variable or get any global value and see it displayed in the console. So to do that, we add another command here, and this one will be get, and we're going to print the global, and the global we're going to print is the global name that they provide, which will be the second string in the command. And then the print global is actually pretty similar to the set global, so I'm actually just going to copy and paste it, try and save time. Just change this to print. This only takes the one argument or parameter, so we're going to get rid of that. And now we're going to get the global to make sure it exists here, and then we're going to set up a local string for our value. And for these, we're going to change these set values to get values, and then we can, there's nothing that goes passed in to get values, we can get rid of that. And for each one, we're going to set value as assigned. And for this one, it's int, so we're going to say unbox int get value. And the next one, we're going to, I'm just going to type it. The next one, we're going to unbox float of the value we get back, and the final one we're going to unbox string. And now once we've set that value, we're just going to print off this name of the global equals the value. Okay, and so you can see our error thing, and we're going to change this to a capital G. So you can see that, hey, global gravity does not exist. And they go, what? Oh man. So they gotta change what they're trying to say. Now we're gonna say get gravity matches that name, and then we run it, and there you see it. Gravity is 12. And finally, we're gonna add one more command. What this command is gonna allow the user to do is actually to create new instances of classes in your code. So what we'll do is we're going to set up a list of objects, and every time the user enters this command, it's going to add a new instance of whatever object they specify into this object's list. And it helps if I set up the list right. So it's a list of the object type. And then now in our main function, we're going to initialize it, new list of objects. And this command is going to be the create. So that's going to be our command, then followed by the name of the class that they want to create. And then after that, it's going to be whatever they want to send to the constructor. And in this case, we're just going to send the name of the player. I'm going to make up a new fun, I want to call him Borosh. And now once we process input, we're just going to add that command, create, and then we're going to say objects, that's our object list, add last, and the new function we're going to create is called create object, and it's going to pass in the name of the class we want to create an instance of, and then the argument that we want to send to the constructor. And now normally you'd want to maybe store this in a temporary variable first, just make sure it's not null, because you don't want to add a null to this object list. That doesn't make any sense, but for now I'm just going to leave it like that. And now let's create our create object function. It's going to return the object type, and it's going to take in the class name and the argument. And now we're going to get a local variable of the class info for the class that they're trying to create an instance of. So we're going to get class name, and we're going to make sure that this class actually exists. Otherwise, we'll print an error. the class name does not exist. And if it doesn't exist, it's going to continue on, and we're going to return null from there. Because otherwise, if it does exist, we're going to return an actual object. So now that we've done that, I'm going to create a local variable for our constructor. And this is the function info type, if you remember from the last video. And then we're going to call the get constructor method of our class info object. So we're going to get constructor, and the parameter types need to match our actual constructor, so we're sending in the array of just the one parameter, which is the string class or string type. Now that we have our constructor, we're going to create a temporary variable for our object, and we're going to call the invoke, or we're going to invoke our constructor's function info object, and we're going to send it the boxed string of our argument that we passed in when we wanted to create the object. And now that that's invoked, we should now have an object actually stored in there with an instance of this class. So we're going to return temp object. That will return it to our code here and create the player. And especially we can make sure it actually creates the player. We're going to go into the constructor of our player class and print player, the name created. So that should be called once we instantiate this object. So it should be good. Let's run it, and it says player does not exist. And it helps to assign that class to the class info variable. I don't know why I keep doing that. Alright, so now we'll run it again. And you'll see player Boros was created. So yeah, there you have it. It's nearly a scripting language within your program. This is, something that's good for, well, I wouldn't necessarily use this in an actual game, but you can use this in your editor. It would be really nice for creating entities and other objects in your game. Allow you to script them, and yeah, pretty sweet, huh? It's pretty sweet. So that's gonna do it for Reflection. Hope you enjoyed these past 3 videos, and you can email me at jim@smalltimeoutlaws.com or leave comments down below if you have any questions, and I'll see you in the next video.